Okay, so we are waiting for Ben, Asa, and Milani. Okay, what is Ben? What is Asa and Milani now? Okay. Um, while we wait for the other two, question 6. See, there was a reason I put this question here. So, Chipo, can you please answer question 6 for us? Question 6 being, does having sex after being coerced to consent, right? So this person has kind of persuaded you to get you into the mood and actually, partake in sex. Does that count as rape?
To me personally, yes. Because like what was said before by Hermila, there's consent where you give verbal permission, maybe written. It may seem clear, but you weren't enthusiastic about it. And for me, enthusiastic consent is more, well, not more important, but more important than consent itself, because enthusiastic consent means you had feelings of strong agreement to the situation or the activity that is being partaken. So as soon as you're persuaded to do something and your initial reaction to being asked is not yes, then it's rape to me.
Right. Thank you, Chipo. Ashima, can you please answer question 6? Would you like me to repeat?
I'm ready. Absolutely. Yes, it does count. Like we've said before, it's coercion, forced coercion, and it's rape. So if someone has coerced you, you were silent, you were away from the whole thing, you expressed disagreement, but the person never let you say no or whatever, it's automatic, it counts as rape to me.
All right. Asa, I see you're back at your desk now. Can you please answer that? Question 6.
Please repeat the question for me.
The question is, does having sex after being coerced to consent count as rape?
Yes, it does. Well, it does, but it's hard for like everyone to accept what happened. But like, if you know that that you were coerced into having sex with someone, then yes, it is rape.
All right.
And it doesn't matter whether the person who raped you is the one is saying that their intention wasn't to rape you, because your actions speak louder than what your intent was.
Okay, yeah. So as we have intent versus action here, all right. Milani, question 6.
Yeah, I agree with Asa, man. Intent doesn't penetrate, the person does, you see. With that being said, if the key ingredient to legal sex is consent and coercion eradicating that, then that means that the sex you're having is not consensual if it is coerced, which would mean that that's rape, because rape is unconsensual sex.
Mm-hmm. You see? All right. Yeah. Mela and Ben, do you guys have anything to add, or can I move to the next question? All right, next question. Okay. Do you think men's no in any form has the same magnitude as that of women? Why or why not? Mela, can I please have your answer for that
question? I think not from my perspective, but from a socially, when you look at things right now as they are socially, men's no definitely does not have the same weight, which I mean is horrible, because I mean everyone is a human being and they get to have the right to a no just like a woman does. And even like in laws, usually it's written women like when a woman is forced to have sex, as like the definition for rape. Now I think it's been changed, but yeah, I think it's people think that because men are sexual creatures or something, that they're supposed to want it, and their no isn't, it's like falling onto deaf ears because I don't know, I guess it doesn't make sense to people or something. But at the end of the day, men are people and they get to have a say and they get to say no.
Thank you, Mela. Ben, can you please answer question 7? All right.
I don't know, listening to all this other stuff, I mean, it seems like the consensus is that when like usually the coercion is done by a man, so a man's yes is more powerful than a woman's no. Like as a general consensus, that's what I've got the idea of right now. So is a man's no doesn't have the same magnitude? I would say no. I think it does, if not even bigger, because like I think what is more the case is that people don't take a man's like trauma or response to it as serious as a woman's. But I think in like a general sense, like when it's happening, and if like we can't, it does make sense in my mind that we say in a general sense, I'm just speaking in the general, that a man's yes is more powerful than a woman's no, because all of us have said that the man is the one coercing, like in most situations. That's like what everyone's used as an example. So in that case, in my mind, it only makes sense then that a man's no also means more, in like a, from that whole societal aspect. But what I would then, like, I'll repeat what I said, is that I think that men versus women rape survivors, men don't get taken as seriously by other men and by other women. Like you see it mostly on social media or whatever, but when a kid has sex with a teacher and it's a guy and a hot teacher, then he's like celebrated even though he was raped by this teacher. Or when you watch videos or whatever and you see a guy that's been too scared to say that he's been raped because it's shameful, because he's supposed to be a man in that sense. So I think they don't get taken as seriously as women, and there as well, like women don't even get taken as seriously as they should, in my opinion. But it's like the level is a bit deeper for men when getting taken seriously of being raped. But I think the yes and no, to me, it's the same.
Asa, can you please answer question 7 for us?
I agree with everyone else that like a man's no isn't as like strong as a woman's no, because men, I know of a lot of guys who have been in situations where them saying no is just another, like, they like people just blow it off, or guys speaking about stories of where they've been sexually harassed or just raped. They're not taken as seriously by society, by people. Like, people make fun of it, or people will just blow it off like, oh, you're just looking for attention. And yeah.
Thank you, Asa. Ashrima, question 7, please.
Okay, so I do agree that it should be equal. We all should be equal. But right now, in the social context and also in the cultural context, if a man or if a woman ever receives a no from a man, they most of them, sometimes, mostly, or in some cultures, it's seen as like you're weak or you're less of a man if you don't want to partake in this. Like that rejection, it makes other men and other women kind of belittle the man who doesn't want to partake in this or who has rejected the consent. So I do agree that it is not the way to do things. It should weigh the same. The no's should weigh the same as how it weighs for women when they admit to have been raped or something like that. So yeah.
All right. Does everyone agree? Can I move on to the next question, or is there anything no one else would like to add? Mela? Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Mela.
Okay, so I think I get where Ben was coming from when he said that men's no's should count more if their yeses count more. I get that. But I think in my head, I think it doesn't count, it's not heavy enough. It should be like a no is a no, and but it is true that men usually do have more power in relationships, especially when it comes to female and male sexual relationships. So if they do want to say no, they can, I guess, and maybe they will be taken seriously. But I think there's also that shaming of like why, like, don't say that, like you shouldn't, like inside you're like, oh, don't, like I shouldn't be saying no because I'm a man and men are supposed to want sex. Yeah, but I think that it should count more, but maybe it does count more than women's no.
All right. Thank you, Mela. Milani, I saw your hand was up.
So I think like the main parts have been said really. Man has sex, celebrated. Woman has sex, shamed. So what does that set? That, okay, you should be having sex if you're a guy. If you're having sex, that's a good thing, So it doesn't present itself as something that a man can really say no to. And it's certainly the case where a lot of men don't actually want to have sex, They either feel they should for social standing, or maybe some genuinely don't want to have sex. And it's not spoken about enough how women harass men regularly, such as certain instances. Say if you were to sit on my crotch, who did you ask? You are harassing me. Who said I wanted that? You see? But then here's the thing. You've been trained to think that men just want sexual desire or sexually, all they think about is sex. And we've also been trained to think that women also aren't as sexually inclined or sexually, or don't desire sex as much, which is highly problematic. And now we have social problems where a man says, I didn't consent, and he gets laughed at. And then you hear things like, how do you not consent? You had an erection. Clearly you must have wanted it. And then that just spirals my head, because there's so many cases of women who've had unconsensual sex and have had orgasm, or have been lubricated. There's some involuntary responses that your body gives, you see. And it's not the case that means consent. And I think people tend to bypass that when it comes to men. And so socially, I think people don't really care about a man's no as much as they do about a woman. I do think, though, that people should care more about a woman's no, because a lot of women are being harassed and violated, and I wouldn't take that away from them. But I think I've basically touched on everything.
Thank you, Milani. Chipo, before we go back to Ben, Chipo, I saw your hand was up.
I think it differs on which area you grew up in, because I'm from Botswana. So here, a man's no is significantly, has more magnitude than a woman's yes or no, because here we're trained that at the end of the day, the man makes the decision. So with that being said, in our society, even socially among my age mates, what a man feels, what a man says will always be respected more than what a woman says, feels, or does. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right. I think that's very interesting. Ben, I saw your hand is up.
Yeah. What I was trying to say with the whole it does count the same. I mean, yeah, maybe on social media and in society, people think that the man's no doesn't mean as much, but like when you think about it, most rape cases are a man sexually assaulting or raping a female. That means that in most cases, a woman's no has no meaning because she said no, they didn't respect it. So I don't think that a man's no doesn't have the same magnitude. Like, it's way bigger than the woman's no. And I do understand the whole stigma of this, the way the world works, the way the patriarchy works, that the poor guy, people don't feel as sorry as they do for women. But I feel like that's like the what's it? It's this term, the oppression Olympics. You want to also now make people feel bad for you, but the real issue that still needs to be dealt with is the women that are being raped and assaulted and harassed. It happens on a way bigger scale. And I do understand that, yeah, everyone's trauma and you can't compare, everything's relative. But I just do think, like what Chipo said, like a lot of the times, in a lot of households and in a lot of cultures, it's what the man says goes. That's why I wanted to differentiate the man's no and the man's like the actual deed of when it does happen. I don't think people take it as seriously as they should, because they say, oh, it's a guy. But I think in the moment, I do think the man's no means more than the woman's no, because the stats suggest that women are the ones being raped at a higher scale. So that means their no's have no meaning. If you guys know what I'm saying, like I don't want to discredit any of your points or say what you guys saying isn't true, but I'm just saying, like, if you really think about it, like, we can't say a man's yes means more and then say the no doesn't, like in the situation, because let's look at just the situation, not society. In the situation, usually the no is no when the guy says it, and when a girl says it, they either coerced or they just straight up raped. And now I've learned that it's the same thing. Coercion is basically rape. So at the end of the day, that's what I was basically saying. Yeah, maybe in society's eyes, men are looked at in this way that they're not allowed to feel these things and whatnot. But that's like after the deed. So I think that's where the major issue lies, where men's cases of rape doesn't have the same magnitude as women's, and some would say rightfully so, just because women's cases aren't even that big as they should be, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I get you, Ben. Mela, do you still have something to say? Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I believe that intersectionality is important. So just because one thing is a big deal and the other one is a smaller issue doesn't mean that the other one also doesn't need focusing on or attention, or just.
I cut you off very quickly. Please define intersectionality for people who do not know what it means.
Define intersectionality. Okay, so off the top of my head, it's basically when you are in the process of, I want to say, it's equality for all people, right? Mm-hmm. It's wanting equality for all people, all genders, all sexes, all races, everything. So it's not just feminism, it's also racism. You understand what I'm trying to say? Like fighting against misogyny and fighting against racism and fighting against misandry and, men's issues and everything. So, right, intersectionality, just because women's issue is a big deal doesn't mean that, you know, men's issues aren't. And also on top of that, I don't know if you guys have heard of, but like, okay, so in most cases, I've heard of men saying, like, they'll say, oh no, like, you know, their girlfriend asks for sex, they say no, and then she keeps asking, and it's more like it's a coercion. I don't think women forcefully rape men as much as men forcefully rape women. I don't think there's that much force in it, but I definitely think that there is coercion that happens. And as we've talked about it, coercion, rape, one thing. So then it becomes rape. And if someone says no once and you can't stop at that point, then it becomes rape. And I feel like lots of women do that, especially with in relationships that have already been created and established. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, before I ask the next question, which is question 8, and Asa, can you please answer that for me as soon as I ask it? I just want to ask to the panel, would you guys then say that seduction is a form of coercion coming from the woman's side? Yes, no, Milani?
Okay, so this is the trickiest thing ever, seduction. Seduction comes into play when it comes to any sexual relationship. It's a great thing. It's exciting. It's, you know, it's exciting. But here's the thing with seduction. If you are to be a seducer of some sort, you need to know how to read the room and the cues of your partner or the individual that you are seducing. You know, if you're seducing those who are not willing to be seduced, then you are bordering around coercion, which is very dangerous, you see. Otherwise, seduction is great, man. You know, you want everyone to have fun and everything like that. Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything to?
Okay. I wanted to raise a point when Mela was speaking, when she was saying that when it comes to the thing when women rape men, she doesn't think that it's really a forceful situation. I just don't want us to take for granted the situation that's happening. We don't know what happens when women rape men. We don't know what the scenes are like. It could be forceful. So with that response, I also kind of want to link it to the whole seduction thing. What if the man, like, you don't know what the situation is? What if the man is tired, genuinely? What if the man is tired, or what if the person being seduced is tired and genuinely doesn't want this to happen, but the seducer is just putting on the show, like not stopping? And I'm not sure if it becomes rape if the seducer gets their way, but we shouldn't take for granted the situation that happens or the context in which it happens, because it's completely different to what we all normally think or we all assume. We shouldn't assume. But that's all I have to say.
All right. Mela. Okay, Mela, I'll take your question, then we'll move to question 8 before we run out of time.
Okay, so adding on to what Akuma said, I think as soon as seduction becomes, well, as soon as the person receiving that seduction seems to express discomfort or, you know, like just, or says no, then I think that's when the line becomes, you know, very easy to cross. And I think if you continue onwards, I think it can, maybe it's not rape, you know, like maybe you don't even go and have the actual sex, but it's definitely, it can be sexual harassment if you just, I mean, if a person's saying no, or if they're like, I'm tired, I don't want to do this, and you continually are coming onto them, then it is sexual harassment. So I think it doesn't matter if it's, you know, in bed or in your bedroom or like on the street. I think it's the same thing either way.
Thank you, Mela. Question 8, Asa, can you please answer this one? Question 8 is, would you say that in a relationship, either a serious relationship, marriage, or casual, intimate relationship with sexual history, consent is a given or unwritten rule?
Well, history says it is, but really it isn't, because you don't get married to have sex with someone for the rest of your life. You marry someone for a completely different reason from that. So it is very possible to rape your wife or husband, or, well, because you think that you deserve it. You don't deserve someone's body. You don't marry to own that other person's body. You guys marry to become one. So yes, it people do say that it's unwritten rule to have sex when you're married, but you're still allowed to say no.
All right. Thank you, Asa. Actually, can you please answer Asa?
I mean, culture says it is, but it's really not. Again, like how Asa said, you marry someone, like, I don't know what's written in a marriage certificate, but I'm sure there's no place to sign for consent for sex every day or whatever. Same as when you're married, the ring doesn't make a difference. You give consent the way it should be given. So you would rightfully respectively ask your wife or husband, hey, do you want to do this? Or if they don't feel like it, they don't want to, they're allowed to. It shouldn't be an unwritten rule. It shouldn't be a must that now, just because we're married, I'm supposed to give you myself whenever you require, or vice versa. So it shouldn't be, like, it isn't. So it's not an unwritten rule. I've seen married people, like, whenever someone doesn't want it, they say they don't want it. And obviously if someone crosses that line and coerces them or whatever, it becomes rape, married or not.
Thank you, Asuma. Chipo, can you please answer question 8 for us?
I agree with what has been said. I currently don't have anything else to add on to the question.
Okay, thank you, Chipo. Ben, can you answer question 8 for us?
Yeah, like, I definitely agree. I would say it's definitely not an unwritten rule. Like, there's like casual, serious, doesn't matter. Like, it's consent is like the most important thing. It's like otherwise you're just raping someone you really love. So yeah, definitely not a given. Like, it should never be a given. It should always just be communicated. I mean, it's obviously different than casual, because like you can talk more, it can be more open, but it's super important no matter at what stage you are. Consent, that is being important.
Does anyone else have anything to add, or can we move on to the next question? Next question. All right, this is the last question. Question 9 is, do you think women use the stereotype of men always wanting to have sex as a way to assume consent without actually asking for it? And Mela, I'll ask you to start us off with that one.
Right. So I definitely think so. I think we brought it up earlier on when we were talking about if men's know way less or whatever. There is definitely an idea somewhere out there that people think, men always want sex, and men are sexual beings and they should always be okay with it, be fine with it, want it from any woman, especially if it's conventionally attractive woman. So I think as soon as a woman assume that this guy wants sex, and it's obviously consensual when they haven't even gotten consent.
Thank you, Mela. Milani, can you please answer question 9?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, people just assume men are sexual creatures. So with sex, you're giving the creature what it wants, and that's the end of it, you see. So that's a problem, because with how consent works, the initiator should always try to get consent. It's not always the man who initiates, the woman should too, you see. Yeah, with that being said, it's a problem, and I think we've covered it, or there's nothing more I can add on to it. I do think that women assume that men always want to have sex and just think consent is implied. It's never assumed with consent.
All right. Does anyone else have anything to add? No. All right, then. With that being said, thank you for joining our Happen Tuesday session tonight. Please stay safe, wear your mask, and we will see you next time. Thank you to my panel members. Thank you to Chad and Mira. Yeah, bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Stay safe, man.
So much.